So as I mentioned, our topic today is improving client experience with technology. Today's speakers are Chris Nelson. He's a senior manager of legal marketing here at CallRail. Nalini Prasad, she's the chief strategy officer at BluShark Digital. And Maddie Martin, who's the VP of marketing over at Smith.ai. Thanks for joining us. Very excited to have you guys here. The agenda today, we have a pretty jam-packed agenda, but we are covering some really great topics. First, I'll go over a couple of housekeeping items and we'll give some basic introductions. Then we'll dive into why is your client experience important? Why do you need to care about your client experience, and what does impact on your business? Then we'll cover some tips to optimize things like your intake process and how to improve close rates, which are all really tightly correlated to the experience that you're providing your leads and your clients. And then we will look at key factors in improving your close rates. We'll wrap up with how to drive more referrals and reviews, which ties more into the client side of things, but making sure that a positive experience leads to referrals or leads to positive online reviews and improves your online reputation. So with that, my name is Sean Bruno. I'm from CallRail. I'm the manager of demand here, focused on the legal vertical. I live up in Boston. I'm a career marketer with over 10 years in software and tech. And I'm really passionate about helping small and mid-sized law firms build their business. Helping small businesses build their business in general is why I joined CallRail. I will hand it off to the other speakers in a moment, but just a couple items of housekeeping before we get started. If you have questions, we'll be taking questions and answers throughout the presentation, as well as a question and answer section at the end. Use the Q&A function within Zoom, ask your question and we'll make sure it gets answered. Same with comments, definitely feel free to chat if you have any comments to leave. Again, the chat function should be turned on for you. We will also be recording this webinar, so if you have to leave early or you want to share a copy, don't worry, we will be sharing this out tomorrow to everyone that registered. So you can find it there, or you can find it on our website at callrail.com/learn. That's our resource center. And with that, let me hand it off. So Nalini, why don't you give yourself an introduction?
Hi, everybody. Nalini Prasad from BluShark Digital. A lot of what I do here is kind of keep up with Google and figure out what its next move is so that we can help our law firms kind of stay ahead, stay very present and visible on the first page of Google. We work with law firms specifically, and I actually get to speak at about 30 legal conferences a year, not just on digital, but operations, hiring and firing, intake, all sorts of things to actually build your law firm and continue to scale, not just online, but offline as well. So I'll be chiming in here with some cool information on reviews, how the online lead system turns into making sure you can convert those. And I'm very excited to share a lot of tidbits here with Maddie today.
Hey all, I'm Chris Nelson. I am the senior manager of legal marketing here at CallRail. As you can see, I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia now. Actually practiced for several years in mid-sized and small law firms at the beginning of my career. I have a law license in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and then moved into a general counsel role with the flooring distributor. Actually moved over from there to the business side, handled our strategy and marketing, really got some experience with that. What I am looking forward to and really enjoy in my role here at CallRail is the ability to work with lawyers to grow their firms. That is something that I get energized about, that opportunity, and just look forward to being able to talk with everybody on this call and get a better idea of how we can help.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Maddie Martin. I'm the VP of marketing at Smith.ai. I'm based in Buffalo, New York, so enjoying the warm weather while I've still got it. And I've actually been in digital and a lot of other forms of marketing for almost 2 decades now, actually. And I've led marketing departments basically from the ground up for 3 startups now, all that have received pretty substantial venture capital funding, and 2 of which, not yet Smith.ai, have had very successful exits. So I know what it takes to grow a business that has major value to the outside world and to the customers and clients that you're serving by using resources really efficiently. So I'm all about making sure we have a balance of productivity and profits and professionalism. So you'll hear me talk a lot about that. and specifically working a lot with law firms to help them balance their priorities and make sure that you can, go heads down and get things done during the day without incurring a ton of interruptions.
Awesome. Thanks. Very excited. So with that, let me hand it over to Chris, who will kick off our first topic. Why is your client experience important?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I think that's kind of the baseline topic for why we're here. I think when you take a look at how things operate, you've got two sides of really trying to drive your revenue. You've got the initial side, which is how do you generate leads and how do you get those leads and turn them into prospective clients. And then you've also got all of the experience that surrounds either those prospective clients or actual clients. And, I think the thought process is that client experience can't be just a buzzword. I know it has become something that has really been, I would say it's overused and trite in some respects. But, with respect to service providers, as a professional services firm, your client experience is absolutely vital. In fact, when you look at it, it's the single most important factor to generating customers and to boosting your revenue. It's where you get your customer satisfaction. It's where you get your client loyalty. And, when you look at it, 61%, this is from a Microsoft study that was done a couple years back, 61% will stop doing business with a firm, a company, just because of one negative customer experience. And I think that I would say, and Nalani, you could probably speak to this, I think we've all been Amazoned in terms of what we're looking for in terms of our client experience. And so our expectations with respect to how we are treated as a client have changed over the past 5 to 10 years. I mean, how would you say about that?
Yeah, no, and I think one of the biggest pieces is that your client experience begins almost before you start talking to them, right? So from the moment that they're looking for a service, and this applies to any industry, and then they have these results there on page 1 of Google, or a buddy has said, hey, go use this guy or go use this woman. I really think you'll jive with them, right? It's looking at you online now and learning about you before they even pick up the phone. And so making sure that the brand that you are providing there, making sure that all the pieces of the puzzle work from A to B to C, that it's a nice user experience, is extremely important before they even get on the phone with you, because it's all about those expectations that are set, right, based on what your brand looks like. And I think that's changed a lot just because of technology and the age of the folks that are looking for services, right? Millennials are now in their 40s. They are folks who are looking for their services online, and they're looking for a certain type of client experience and engagement. And I do think that's changed a lot, to your point, Chris.
I mean, I would add, just the nature of legal services, because they are so personal. I think it actually would add a little bit more to, it's not like you're buying toilet paper. The experience is something where you're sitting there and you are working with somebody in a personal setting on a subject matter that could be, it could be an adoption. It could be a child custody situation. It could be an estate plan. Those are all very, very personal situations.
The trust is a big factor there, 100%. And also beyond personal items, the high dollar nature of things. Sometimes it is they're paying a great deal for your services, right? If you're a high asset divorce lawyer, or if they believe that there's a big settlement online, or it's their third DUI and that's a higher retainer, they're investing a lot in your services. It is not buying toilet paper. You're right there.
Yeah, Sean, I think if you go to that next slide, when you look at it, people will pay more for a positive client experience. In fact, almost overwhelming numbers of clients and prospective customers will pay more for a positive customer experience. So really, you're looking at it as you need to make the right impression to turn a prospective client, a lead, into an actual client, but you really don't get a second chance for that. You were talking about how you're in a situation where it's not even from the point that they first contact you. It's touch points before that. What are some real world implications in terms of client experience? Obviously leads, right? They impact your conversion rates. And speak to, some of either the intake process, how you look at things online.
Yeah, Maddie, you are also the guru on intake, but here in terms of when people want to look at that intake, they want to see something that's easier, right? So if they have to scroll around your website or click 5 times to find a phone number to give you a call, then that's going to be terrible. CallRail, one of the beauties of that is that it's on every single page of your site. It's top right corner. They've done that so that it's nice and easy. It's also really cool. We'll talk about the tracking of how you learn about that searcher from having this phone number, but making it bright, making it very focal, making that chat be right there in the right-hand corner. Sometimes people will say, you know what, this is annoying. It's in my way, but being able to find a way to communicate with the service that you want to get with is very important. So the first piece is being visible. From there, I'm sure you have thoughts there, Maddie.
No, I totally agree with you. And I want to, also call attention to friction in other places and duplication in other places, anything that's going to delay or frustrate someone. We see that there are intake forms on websites, or you go through an initial call and you're asked those same questions, and then you're asked those questions again by a more specialized person and then the attorney, and they're just trying to make sure that the information is correct. And by that point, the person is wondering, if you can't pay attention to these details, how can it be my attorney? So you really have to worry about betraying your delivery of services and the quality that you live up to by the initial experience, because if you're the best attorney in the world and you have a terrible upfront experience, or it looks like you're not paying attention to that aspect of your business and being as careful as the rest of the work that you conduct, then you really risk betraying those potential clients, because you're not actually conveying the experience you can deliver down the line.
And along those lines, we think about the brand that you portray. If you're out there putting up Spanish ads and you have, a nice Spanish ad that they click on, and then they come to a page that's in English, you're losing them on that journey, right? You have, if you're going to, exactly what you're saying, if you're going to put forth that you provide this type of service, then you need to land on a Spanish page. That content needs to be in Spanish. And guess what? That intake needs to also be in Spanish, because you don't all of a sudden want somebody with, 100% English speaker, doesn't understand a lick of Spanish, taking that intake. That user experience has just completely gone away. And that is a negative experience where somebody won't come back at all and they'll tell their friends.
Totally. It's all about the expectations that you set. And frankly, we always encourage people to just set a little bit lower expectations, exceed them, and then take a stepped approach in making improvements. Like, you don't have to look like the multi-million mega firms right off the bat. Just do a simple thing really well and develop from there.
I think that ties into, once they've converted from leads into actual clients, then you're looking at, all right, the client experience, everything that goes into them being an actual client. That's going to lead to your situation where, the reviews. Now, it's not like it used to be, word of mouth, but word of mouth could only travel so far. Now you've got something that goes online that is basically what used to be the whisper word of mouth, but it's visible to everyone. And that can really affect how you are perceived as a lawyer in the marketplace. That can affect your brand reputation. And as it relates to your pocketbook, it can affect potential referrals, because the client referrals, a lot of times, and especially in the more personalized settings where you are dealing with a family law issue, a personal injury issue, a criminal defense issue, most of those are going to come from people who are known to other people. And, that is where, if you have a terrible client experience, if you're a lawyer who has a bad bedside manner, I think it really can affect how you are perceived and really what your practice could be like down the line.
And yeah, go ahead, Maddie.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think the big piece here is that this takes work to get those positive reviews and to get the client referrals. When you have a bad experience, man, you're telling everybody. You are shouting from a rooftop, right? But when you have a good experience, you're like, yeah, that was good. But you're not inclined to say, all right, let me tell everybody about that, which is really sad, because that should be the positive experience you want to want to actually share, but our brains naturally, there's a psychology to it. When there's a negative, we want to talk about it more, right? So there has to be a process, and I think later we'll talk about this, but a process to actually get those online reviews out there and encourage people to actually go reach out to friends and tell them that they've had a good experience.
I'm so glad that you mentioned process, Nalini, because with any process, there has to be something that triggers that process to start. And you can't just ask for a review or a referral or testimonial anytime during the entire process. Like, as good as you are at client experience, you're not going to be a 10 out of 10 every single moment of your client interactions, right? So you have to know, where in this client interaction are my clients most likely to be delighted, to feel relief, to feel stress-free, to feel taken care of, to feel all those positive things that we see in the, Clio Legal Trends Report, for example, every year. Clients will often say that they feel relief, they feel gratitude, they feel all these things. And the data shows that the attorneys are not as perceptive to those client feelings as the clients report feeling them, right? So what that means is we can be better in tune with how our clients are feeling and at what points, so that we can ask for those reviews when they're most likely to be most positive, most invigorated, right? Like most excited to be proactively sharing that wherever you ask me to share it, right? So yes, to have a process, but also you can't just apply it willy-nilly. You really have to be on the lookout for those triggers that are going to lead you to a yes, a really strong review, and maybe they're going to, create a video for you as well. People don't fake it that well. If they're not feeling good, or it was a long time ago, or you waited too long, you're not going to get that passion that you could get if you get the timing right.
It reminds me, there's my wife and I are huge, my whole family is huge fans of Disney. And there is a website that is entirely devoted to everything that is wrong with Disney. And, it's all negative this, negative this, negative this. But there's no equal website that's devoted to, hey, all the wonderful things about Disney and all that. So that, I think, is really the negativity that you're talking about, just in one
Yep.
place.
Yep.
So, Maddie, let's talk a little bit about how, what can you do with respect to your client experience?
Yeah, so thanks so much, Sean, for moving the slides along. So we're going to talk about ways to improve the client experience through the intake process and things that are often associated with that, like scheduling and, like the actual questions that we're asking. So you can go to the next slide. Let's get into some of the data here. So, business owners, yes, you're a business owner as a firm owner. We know that leads are demanding quick replies, right? Prospective clients, potential new clients, whatever you call them, PNC. We know that they're demanding a quick reply, and they're not just informed by, the last law firm they worked with. Most people are totally new clients. They're informed, as Chris said, by Amazon, by Uber, by DoorDash, by all of these things that are delivering things in the moment. And even though we complain about the experience when we call up our phone service provider, like, Comcast or internet provider, we've still come to expect that we're going to have 24/7 service, and we're going to get an answer, even if we might not like that answer. So that is the consumer base in the world that we live in, full stop. Now, the shame is that we've got a lot of wasted budgets because businesses like law firms are not meeting these expectations, right? So we've talked a little bit about this already. The statistics show that the majority of marketing leads never convert into sales, mostly because of lack of outreach, follow-up, timing of the follow-through, answer and response times, and all of that. It's not that business was not able to convert that lead into a sale. It's not like you have to go to Toastmasters and sales training camp and read everything Tony Robbins has to say. It's all about response time, and that setting you up, even if you're not that good at sales, for making a sale, right? Because that person who's on the phone wants you to sell to them. They want an attorney. They want to have their needs on their way towards being taken care of, right? Or at least to explore that and feel like they've got a guy, right? So if you go to the next slide, we also have to wonder, well, why are we not answering the phone if we know it's this important to business growth and keeping the lights on and putting dinner on the table and fulfilling the work that we've, gone into in this world? Well, there are a lot of interruptions, and sometimes those interruptions are from spammers, and hopefully there's some progress coming down, legislatively on that. And there are, a lot of unqualified leads. We have campaigns and we don't know which calls to answer and which ones not to answer because, we see a random number on caller ID, and we know from spoofing and other issues with phone calls from spammers that it could be your area code. It could look like a local number, but it's just not someone who's actually worthy of picking up the phone for. So as a result, less than 50% of incoming calls are answered, and that's you, and it's also your lead. So you can't blame them, because I know when you look at your cell phone, you don't want to pick up that random number, and neither do they. They went on your website. They didn't memorize your phone number. They don't know that you're calling them back. But if they just filled out a form, or if they just called you and you called them back instantly, you better believe they're going to give the benefit of the doubt to picking up that number. So immediacy in answering and in follow-up really matters, because people do tie those two events together. They don't think it's going to be a spammer when they just click submit and someone's immediately calling them back. They're thinking, oh, well, I was hoping for a call back and this has got to be it. And if it is, you're going to get that business. Now, one of the other problems is that we have a lot of potential clients who are consulting with firms that they don't hire. 68% are consulting with firms they don't hire. And a lot of that can be eliminated in the wasting of time, because we can ask better questions up front. And that's what we're going to talk about shortly. How do we ask those pointed questions before a consultation takes place? Because even if you tell me, Maddie, I charge for consultations, it's $400 to have a consultation with me, not you losing sleep, on bad consultations. And it's like, well, there's an opportunity cost to that time. And even if you're charging your hourly rate, it's not productive to be working towards $400 out of $400 total if you could be working on something that's $400 towards thousands of dollars total, right? I mean, your business with that unqualified lead ends at $400. And I don't think that most attorneys are going to be satisfied with that being the total lifetime value of that interaction, right? Of that potential client. So you're not in the business of consultations, you're in the business of being an attorney. So your value is $400 towards a larger value. You might even credit that to their larger bill because it is so big. You're not in the business of making money off of consultations. So you want to screen unqualified leads out as much as you possibly can and build your reputation, your referrals in the community through referring to other law firms that would be better suited to help that person. And we also find that your firm can get reviews, and Nalini sees this too. You might get a 5-star review just because you shepherded someone in the right direction away from you, but you did them a good service. And that's also impactful in your role in the community and someone who's going to refer to you, even if they didn't even work with you. Go to the next slide. So you can imagine that we have all these spammers and we have unqualified leads, and then we've got a ton of qualified leads and clients and courthouse staff and judges and opposing counsel and people who need to actually reach you, whether you want to talk to them or not. And you cannot easily determine who's actually calling and coming through. So you need screening mechanisms in order to identify who are the most valuable calls. Well, obviously CallRail can help with that, and so can Smith.ai, and make sure that those most valuable calls are not incurring interruptions for the firm attorneys and staff members, but getting through that screening promptly and getting over to those people who are actually qualified to take that call and to take that conversation to the next step. Scheduling meetings when possible if you're not available, which is fine. If someone has a meeting booked, they're a qualified lead. If they're an existing client, they're going to feel like they're taken care of. They're not going to keep calling you because they have that next step already on the books, right? So online calendaring software is very helpful for solving that bottleneck. It's not just about answering, but it's also about following through on the available tasks as part of that conversation, right? Now, when we solve this bottleneck, we basically have a, smoother flow, and we can say goodbye to the spammers and the sales calls. And then we can say hello only to those people who we actually need to serve and talk to. So next slide.
And I'm going to just one thing on here. So on your first slide where you said that about 50% of budget is just completely wasted on your marketing budget, it kills my heart, but we see this all the time. My biggest piece of advice, especially with that bottleneck, I love that slide, is that as you guys sit there and you're listening to this, you all know that you're all A-type. Right? This is just what lawyers are. We believe that we can do everything ourselves. We can pick up every call. It'll come to my cell phone. It's fine. And it's better that I'm the salesperson and no one's going to sell my services better than me, right? I don't need an answering service. I don't even want to have an intake person. But that is the bottleneck too. And it is as simple as saying, if you're going to put budget towards hiring a marketing company that is not cheap, right? And is going to provide results and get you those leads to your website, gonna make your phone ring, you might as well have just thrown that money in a dumpster fire if you're not gonna have someone that picks up the phone. And if you are going to tell yourself and kid yourself that you're gonna pick up every one of those, I guarantee you, we do this with our clients a lot. We look at our CallRail and we say, hey guys, here's 15 calls that came in. Oh my God, that one doesn't look like one that I got. I don't know this number. I didn't answer this call. Like a lot more happens in the day because you're lawyering, you're doing other things. So I think just kind of like taking the ego out and allowing someone else to pick up that phone, you can still be the escalation. And I'm sure Maddie will talk about that. It's not like they're the only ones that are going to answer this call and sell for you. You will get a chance to talk to the good ones.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Delaney. I really appreciate that. And I think it's such a good point that, first of all, let's say you're having a lot of really good conversations and you are picking up the phone some of the time. If you're not answering the 25% that are coming in after hours, which I really hope and truly believe you're not answering, and I'm not dissing you, it's just the reality, you're missing out on a ton of potential clients. And if you want to say to any of us here, I don't need more clients, I'm good. I'm putting dinner on the table. I've got my kids' college fund set up. Like things are looking good. I'm looking to buy my second house, whatever. Maybe you're looking to buy your 10th house. Don't you want to be working with clients whom you have more selection over? Because if you have more leads, you have more choice over who to work with. And to me, that is one of the ultimate joys and benefits of being your own boss, right? So if you were working for someone else's firm, then sure, you have to take what you get. But the benefit of running your own firm, if you're in a solo or small firm, is to be able to have that choice. So it's always a good thing to be running marketing campaigns and tracking where the best leads are coming from and leaning into and spending budget towards those better campaigns and to answering every single one of those leads who comes through. So you accurately track the return on your investment and you have better selection of the leads who you end up working with. And I know that if you are in family law, then you know that not every client who comes through is someone who you are going to be very happy and eager to work with, right?
And the negative side of that too, right? If you're great and you have all these leads and you're like, oh, I don't need these because I'm buying my 10th house. But think about if you have put forth that you're a responsive person, your brand is great, work with me, and then you have these 30 other people who have called, not gotten an answer because you don't need them, right? What's going to happen? They're going to go leave a negative review and they're going to say this person is not responsive, this person does not pick up the phone. And they only do that because you look like a person they really want to work with. So when one person does that on your Google business profile, let me tell you, the next 30 that you do want to pick up those cases are going to say, well, I'm not even going to call because they don't answer, right? I'm going to read this review before I press call. So that's important too.
And that's another control dynamic, right? Go ahead, Chris, you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, I think part of the reason we get into the law and practice as lawyers is because we want to have interesting cases. So the ability to pick and choose what kind of cases that we have and to have that many leads coming in that we actually have that choice is huge.
Yeah. And some of that comes down to the actual lead channels themselves. So, this is a, thing that we look at very often with call tracking. We want to know, well, because we have call tracking, we have form tracking, we have all of these ways to detect which channel a lead came through on. And even for referrals, maybe the landing page is specifically for a referral, or it's organic search, or it's a paid campaign. And you want to know more about those keywords and those queries that are driving the best leads. You can then trace them back to that original source, that original query for that most valuable client, for that best client you've ever worked with, for the trend of 5 out of the last 10 clients came from that new paid ad campaign or that new landing page that's getting, a high first page ranking on Google. Well, boom, now you're going to do more of that. Now you have an idea of where to focus. And that's when you really start to feel like you've got some consistency, because intermittent control is not going to make you feel like you really have control. You want consistent control over the channels that drive the best leads to you. And that's what we're trying to focus on here. And then when that's figured out, you have the mental bandwidth to think about, how do I deliver a better client experience? How do I optimize my technology? If you're just coming into work every day, not knowing how many leads are going to come through, if you're going to have a positive growth rate this month, how many leads are waiting for you next month, that's a really tricky place to be and a stressful place to be. So looking at this and exposing the data is the first step to having a mature, smooth running law firm.
No doubt about it. I think when Nalani was talking about lawyering, I mean, the thing that I think is important with respect to how you practice, the actual lawyering product is absolutely, that is the product side. You are creating a product, you are providing a product, and that is the, what would be in a manufacturing situation, that's product development, product engineering, product management. That's the product side. The actual, any kind of intake, any kind of sales efforts, I mean, that's sales, marketing, customer service. So if you're trying to do all of that together, really that is taking a lot of time. So anytime that you can sit there and take what is where you would have less expertise, and for most people in the law, their expertise is going to be on the legal side, allow you to transfer it over and allow other people or technology to become the sales, marketing, and service side of how you operate, you're going to be better off.
Totally. And I want to touch on one thing that I remembered from before when Nalini was speaking. It's really important that you consider your total marketing spend and then what is your insurance against that, right? So let's say you're spending 10, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 a month. You'll get there if you're not there already, if you play your cards right. Let's say you're spending that much money on marketing a month and you don't answer the calls consistently and you don't ask the same intake questions every time, which we're going to talk about in a moment, and you aren't really quite sure why some leads convert and others don't. When something changes and things don't necessarily just happen to go your way, or when the lead costs increase, we saw a huge fluctuation in advertising costs over the last few years. When those things change, when your inputs and those factors change, then you really have to start thinking, man, I wish I was doing the same questions on every single call. I wish I had CallRail. I wish I had Smith.ai. I wish I had a CRM or case management solution that helps me track my progress and success and revenue from clients and things like that, right? You want to set those up now so that you establish a baseline. Let's say you're super stable. The rest of the world is going to throw things at you that you cannot control. And if we know nothing else, we know that. So exert control where you can for a very small cost as a percentage of your total marketing spend. So let's move on to the next slide. And I'm going to move pretty quickly, Sean, over the next 5 slides, because I want to get to slide 27 with that form pretty swiftly, because I know we're moving on time. So we're going to talk about intake. The whole point here is that we're going to make significant improvements to process, to productivity, to profitability, and to just driving that consistency home with the right intake questions, utilizing technology as it makes sense to do so, with scheduling after an intake, with an intake form that's hosted online, embedded on your website, available to other third parties, etc. So let's move through slide 23 and then just going to slide 25, actually, if you don't mind. We all know that very basic intake is basic. Ask a question, get an answer, start a case. Okay, so let's say that it's a pretty typical process. You've got someone who comes to your website, chat is available, and you get some basic questions answered, and they explain their needs, and you determine they're a fit for a client for your firm. Because they've had that conversation, now they're a contact logged in your practice management solution or your marketing or intake management software. And a consult is scheduled because we determine through those questions that they are the right fit. A reminder goes out to make sure that they show up, not unimportant. We've done a conflict check if need be. And then maybe there's a more complete intake form that has to happen. You don't have to do intake all at once, right? We can see that there's an initial chat that happens. There might be a few qualifying questions. Then there's a large intake form. And if you're in med mal, if you're in social security disability, if you're in immigration, there are going to be, everything. There's a lot of forms, and there's some data that needs to happen to have a substantial discussion, even a consultation, or maybe there's a retainer and you're having your first real meeting. Either way, there's a lot of ways that people define this as intake. But the way that we're defining it right now is a qualification step to say, before you get that agreement signed and the casework begins, if we can go to slide 27, Sean, we need to establish the next one. We need to establish, what are we working with, right? Is this someone who you actually want to proceed? And you can use this, we'll share the slide deck with you. I'm sure you can use this form on your own. You can also contact me. I have a whole playbook for law firm communications that includes this and other forms. But you want to be asking the same exact questions every single time. Obviously, you're capturing the contact information, but you need more than that. And the best way for you to check if you're doing more is if you go to your website and you look at your contact form, and if you see name, email, phone number, and a big blank box to write your life story or nothing at all, then you're not doing enough, right? We want to actually be asking questions like, is there a court date scheduled? Have you ever worked with an attorney before? Are there any other parties involved? What is your urgency to hire an attorney on a scale of 1 to 5? Are you financially prepared to invest in hiring an attorney at this time if you're not in a contingency practice? If you are, you should explain that, because people don't know how that works. Are there any relevant case details that I need to know before a consultation? How did you hear about us? There are probably 5 critical, maybe 9 max questions that you're going to ask in addition to basic contact information. That's what I want to see on your websites. That's what I want to see asked by the receptionist who answers the call, because you're going to determine from those questions if it's the right time, if it's possible to be funded, if it's the right fit for your firm, if they're in the right geographic area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Are they a match for your firm? And can you determine that from the initial information that's collected? Because if not, you should not be talking to them. That's why almost 70% of consults lead to not hiring. Your conversion rate can be better than that overnight. So that's what I want you to take away about intake. Spend a few moments just getting those questions down, and don't worry about making them perfect, because you'll iterate over time. You start asking these things and then you realize, you know what, I can eliminate that one question because my marketing is going so well that they already have self-identified that they're in the right geographic area. That's basic. It's not a screening point. I know that I'm targeting the right people, then stop asking about it, right? So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer in the chat, but I think we can move on, Sean.
Maddie, one question that I would say that that when I was practicing at a mid-sized firm did not really come up. When I was practicing on my own, absolutely came up and would have been really vital in an intake form, is, are you currently represented by another counsel? That was something that, because you get thrown into a sticky situation, and a lot of times if you've got somebody, maybe you went down to probate court, and I did this several times, I would go down to probate court and I would be filing documents or something like that, and there would be other people that were there, other prospective clients that were there, but they would never tell you if they were represented or not. And you get into an ethical dilemma when you've got somebody who's already represented.
Yes, it is an obligation to ask for that reason because you know better, right? Like you know that you need to have someone who's not already represented. The other thing I want to say here is that you should not be disqualified based on someone's answers that you should be able to meet. For example, payment preference. If they say, I expect to be able to make online payments to you or fund a retainer through LawPay or whatever, like you should not be disqualified by their answers to this sort of thing, right? So they might have a few questions for you and you should know what those are. And you should also be prepared that there's some things technologically that you're going to need to advance in, because the vast majority of clients expect to have ease of process, ease of payment, et cetera. So let's say that they do say, I've got the funds set aside. And then you say, great, can you send me a check in the mail? They're going to say, I'm hiring somebody else who makes it easier for me. Right? So don't be in a situation where you are not prepared to, give an affirmative answer to questions that they should expect a yes to. Okay. I think Chris, you're going to talk about the next bit.
Yeah. So I think that, the next thing is, you've talked about, all right, we have impact, we've got intake, and we're looking at prospective clients. And so the answer is, how do you take those prospective clients and actually make them clients? And what are the key factors that will allow you to do that? And really, I think, as part of this, and because you've got so many different technologies that are operating with each other, one question that we have, and we're actually going to ask it as a poll question, relates to what type of practice management software that you are utilizing, because that really has something to do with how you work with other parts of your tech stack. So, Sean, let's go ahead and move next slide. So, what factors do impact your close rates? One, the online experience. That's, do they even get to be a customer? Do they even get to be your client? Second, we talked about it already, response time. Did you respond when they attempted to be your client? Third, really the client service capabilities that you have or the personnel that you're working with have. Do they ask the right questions? Do they qualify the leads that they're coming to you? And then last, do you have cohesive processes in place from intake all the way through to actual case? And I think all of those, factor together and really create how you get to a closure rate. Nalani, do you have opportunity to kind of speak along those lines?
Mute. So the first one I think we spoke to a lot, but I do want to talk a little bit about the last two there. So client service capabilities. There's two ways to do intake. You can outsource it. You can build an intake team, but regardless of what you're using, the individual that's picking up that phone needs to absolutely be a human who can, talk to a person and actually gauge their feelings and emotions, or if it is going to be kind of a chat bot, that there needs to be, hey, understand that this is what you're going through. Having that emotional connection is a lot of times what's going to make somebody like and trust you and want to do business with you. So if that is kind of outsourcing to a team, you're going to want to make sure that folks can actually, you can change the questions that they'll ask, right? You can have a very personalizable template, but keep it a template, and that you're vetting those companies to make sure that they are folks that have been through a training process, right? And when you are doing it in-house, you are training not just the first time you hire them, but listen to the calls. That's where CallRail comes in handy. You may not be able to pick up every single phone call, but you can once a month find 20 minutes to sit there and listen to a few calls, right? It doesn't have to be the last few, whatever. And understand where are the pain points with your intake person, and then sit down and go through that training again. Make sure with a cohesive process, you have documentation. Like, I'm sure Maddie's going to go into all the training that they do with their actual receptionist, right? But it's not you do it one time, set it and forget it. They also have a playbook that they can refer to at all times. They're checked in on all the time. And that process is so important, with especially what you just put that poll up for. So the more you can automate, we've talked a lot about answering the phone and closing the sale, but there are those times where you answer the phone, you have a good rapport, and the person needs to think about it for a day or so. There is a follow-up that needs to happen, right? And if you can automate that follow-up through, hey, the lead comes in through your website, it goes to your case management system, your receptionist now is calling, right? And then there has to be that next piece, which is every X number of days, there is a follow-up until that person tells you no. It is not no until they say no. So I want to make sure we're always thinking about the follow-up process too.
Maddie, can you speak a little bit to, the kind of tools that you would utilize in that kind of scenario?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that this is where CallRail and Smith.ai go totally hand in hand. And just in the interest of time, honestly, Sean, if you want to move to slide 33, I think we've already touched on a few of them before that, and I'll just weave it in. So one of the most important things that you can do with technology is to just get access to data. So Nalini already touched on that. You want to have call recording, you want to have transcription, you want to have access to that conversation, not only because you can audit, at a cost of almost nothing versus what it would cost you for a very fancy management consultant. But you can have that data to then inform, well, I've got the secret sauce to winning this consultation because I just listened to the entire intake call. I've got the consultation tomorrow morning. And I know exactly, the pain points that I need to address and how to touch on ways that I can directly solve them, and how I'm well equipped with various, experiences in the past that relate to, your likelihood of being successful with this current case. Boom, there's your sales process, right? So it's in the data you're collecting. It's not just about, marketing ROI and making sure you're spending your money on the right campaigns, but when you're spending your money on the right campaigns, you also need to be present with those recordings and transcripts, be available to the highest priority leads, as you can accept a warm transfer, as you can, be in the moment and accept that sense of urgency from someone. But it's really important that you route things properly to begin with. So we've talked a lot about intake. We want to make sure that you are also auditing your phone system. So if you have not called your business number, let's say from your cell phone, or you haven't had a friend or family member call your business office and make sure that the experience is what you want it to be, that's the number one thing. You can't record a call if the call doesn't happen in the first place, right? So make sure that when you've got these systems in place, you've got a phone provider, you've got CallRail forwarding to either that phone provider or to Smith.ai, right? We've got those connection points there. And at every connection point, you need to be checking that there is a successful connection. So make sure that you call your own business number. And if there's an IVR, there's a press 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, 1 for new clients, 2 for existing clients, whatever it is. You can divide things up in that way to triage, but they have to work. If I press 1 and I get nowhere, I'm in trouble. If I press 2 and I get to the entire pool of available people in the firm, then you're going to have a lot of frustrated staff, right? And then you're going to have a lot of interruptions. So make sure that that's set up properly. It's not hard. We assist with that at Smith.ai. We're happy to, because we know that that's part of our successful outcomes, is making sure your routing is set up properly. We also do have some best practices for forwarding to Smith.ai from CallRail. So I would just encourage you to look at the entire system and not just the components within it. But at the most basic, you're going to need a phone system. You're going to need that call tracking in place. You want call recording, and you want the calls actually answered. So there is something to record in the first place. I'm not talking about, listening to voicemail messages for a reason, right? So if we go to the next slide, we can just also talk about how this relates back to customer experience, right? So you're able to attribute the calls that are coming through and getting context on that customer. And you understand also the journey that they went through. Did they click on an ad? That really speaks to intent in a way that you can leverage. If their query was, cheapest attorney in Dallas, Texas, or if their query was fastest divorce, or Is it okay to bring a gun to a courtroom? And you have some blog post about that. Well, you might not want to be bidding on those terms, right? So think about like, what does that mean about how escalated this person is or what they value? Should I be bidding on those terms? Should I even be writing about those subjects? Like, it's going to inform more than just your sales strategy, but probably also marketing more generally. And I joke, but we get leads of all types. You also want to make sure that you cut out that noise, because the less bandwidth you're spending on that, the more bandwidth you have for the really quality leads, right? So it's about refining that entire process. And then you want to also make sure that you're reaching back out. So now that you know who the most quality leads are likely to be, you don't just want calls answered, you also want to make outbound calls to those form fills, to those calls that come in and they just aren't ready to book an appointment, to people who say, I have to talk to my spouse or business partner. Those are people who are quality leads. They just haven't taken the next step yet. And you can get them to take the next step without personally following through yourself by using outreach campaigns and outbound calls that Smith.ai offers, so that our receptionists can actually do that outreach for you with the repetition that Nalini mentioned before. So those are some of the most important things. And if you have that call tracking data, that CallRail data, you know which campaigns to prioritize first, right? Like if it were me, I'm going to look at the sense of urgency. I'm going to disregard a lot of like cheapest, most affordable, whatever, unless it's a contingency practice and then it's just education. If someone's looking for a family law attorney and they're searching cheapest, why would you hustle to get that client, right? You probably, unless you're just starting off, you probably don't want to pursue that really hard, because these are still small costs that add up into investments towards your growth. So you want to be investing your time and attention. You want to be investing Smith.ai's time and attention for you on the leads most likely to convert and to, best align with your firm. Okay, and then I think we're going to go to slide 36, Sean.
I think this was a lot of what you were touching on there too with, and I could not agree more. The one thing that I'm going to emphasize, as you said, it's about refining, right? And about quality. So when you are from a digital perspective, you start at the beginning of this cycle. It's a full circle now, right? Where we've come today is you're going to say, I need to invest money because I need leads. But you don't just need leads, you need a process to follow through with those leads, or you're just spending money, right? So let's say you get your leads in, you have someone answering the phone, these leads are being closed, you now have cases, that's wonderful. Now, how do you continue to grow from there, right? Because you don't want to just say, all right, well, I got a little bit of leads, I did what I did, I'm up to 4 attorneys, and that's, I guess, where I'll stay. No, so you take the same data, and exactly what Maddie was just talking about is those searches, learning about the journey of how somebody got to you can help you make more informed decisions on actually squeezing every piece of juice out of your marketing dollars. It may not be that you need to spend more money in marketing now, it's just refining the way that you are doing your, for my perspective, SEO, right? So in CallRail, we can actually see what page did that lead, now client land on, right? And when we see your 50 leads for that month, and we notice that it is one particular page that is having a lot of calls come from it, but not just calls, that they're turning into client signed. All right, well, what are we doing on that page? What are the calls to action? Where are they? That language is obviously working for wanting clients to actually sign on with you, right? So now we go take a look at all your other pages and we try to mimic that. We try to have those types of calls to actions be on these other motorcycle page now, your divorce page, whatever it may be. And now we start to look at, hey, we're not just looking at quantity of calls, but quality of calls. Now that does take a long time to get there because you got to get through the whole process. It means you've actually fixed your intake process. It means you're getting the data and you're actually looking at the data or having someone look at it. But that is really what you want, is in this full circle, you want to get to the point at which you can grow your business and use this data to continue to grow. But you got to fix the first, right? The fundamentals to begin with.
Totally. I completely agree. Chris, did you want to add something there?
No, I was just going to ask Nalani if, because I know we're running short on time, but Nalani, could you speak a little bit to the differences between mobile and desktop, or the need to have both optimized for mobile as well as a desktop situation?
Yeah, I mean, when Google comes out with these updates, they have them released for mobile and then they have them released for desktop. But at the end of the day, a couple of years ago, Google is only looking at what is on your mobile indexed site. So from the back end, our coding and everything that we're doing on your mobile version of your site is honestly the only thing Google understands is on your website. So whatever content is there is what they see you as. It is extremely important to optimize your mobile, but then from a consumer perspective, mobile is 100% going to be where you're going to get your conversions, right? When people are, and when we even think about on page one, there's all these different elements and places you can show. We want you in that local 3-pack near the top, because when you're on a mobile phone and you search for something, it's right at the top. It has the reviews that you can read right there, and it has a button that literally says call. If I can make it so that people do not have to get lost in your website to find a chat or a form to call, I want them to be able to directly call you. And from your Google business profile or from your website, your receptionist, your intake, they will be able to answer all those calls from any of those places and also give us that data of here's where that call came from. So mobile is extremely important. If your SEO company is not prioritizing that, if you are old school and you're telling them and fighting them against their strategy and telling them, I want everything on my desktop, don't do it. Let them put the information on the mobile first. It is very important.
Amen.
I'm not sure Gen Z puts down their mobile.
Don't want to interrupt. Loved where the topic's going, but we are getting to the top of the hour here. I want to get a few key pieces of information out before we wrap up. So one, Tanya, if you wouldn't mind launching the poll, we have another poll question. If anyone wants to be contacted or followed up with from CallRail, Smith.ai, or BluShark Digital on anything we talked about today, if you want to explore call tracking with CallRail, if you want to explore virtual receptionists with Smith.ai, if you want to explore the services that BluShark offers, let us know. We'll be in contact within a day or so. After we get everything wrapped up, I'll share the list with Maddie and Nalini, and everything will be good there. If you have any questions, now is a great time to drop them in the chat, and we can get to those as well. And then we didn't get to cover better management of your internal resources. And I just wanted to pose the question to you guys. I mean, one of the big things we were going to cover was how CallRail or the data you get from CallRail or the data you get from Smith.ai can help inform how you're managing some of your internal resources. Is there anything that you guys wanted to speak to there real quick before we wrap up?
Maddie, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I would just say we're seeing that one of the ways that small firms and solo firms best compete is by keeping their overhead really, really low. So, there are resources available to you to reduce headcount down to those who are really critical. We don't say don't hire. We say, think about what you can outsource and what you really need to do in-house that builds value, that has, IP implications to your firm, that has process implications, that has, control dynamic that you have to have in-house. That's why we say, virtual receptionists, virtual paralegals, virtual legal assistants, they're going to be ones that you outsource to, same way that you would outsource to a marketing agency, a fractional CFO. Like, you don't need a bookkeeper in-house, right? You probably have great software for that costs a fraction of the price. And typically not just a fraction of the price, but also flexible costs, so that you're not committing to someone's livelihood with their annual salary, because your business probably fluctuates quite a bit. Don't you want your cost to fluctuate as much as your business may fluctuate? So it's another control dynamic. Then when you get experience with these contractors, you can also then hire and know better who you want to hire. That's why there are freelance attorneys as well. You get a sense for who you work well with and who takes direction and what level of experience you need if you're hiring your first associate or attorney to join you, or even a business partner. You really want to have a good sense of what is this person supposed to do? And by hiring an expert on contract, it gives you a lot more education on what you need for your firm if you hire in-house.
And my biggest piece here that I would also leave as my most important takeaway is get out of your own way, right? Understand when you need to delegate. And something that I heard a while ago that I love is, you always hear work on your business, not in your business, if you choose to be that partner, the partner that builds the business, not does the litigation, right? But most importantly, the more you mean to your firm, the less your firm is worth. If you were to get hit by a bus tomorrow and your firm died because you are doing every piece of it yourself, what are you really building, right? So making sure that you're getting out of your own way and delegating the pieces that you can. And when you sit down and create a budget, you're not creating a budget just to get your leads. You're not, as much as Nalini's here, give me all your money, right? No, you're not just creating a budget for digital marketing or for marketing or paid ads. You're creating the budget with the mindset of what are all the other pieces I need, whether that's receptionist, a CMS, a CRM, all of the tech pieces need to be figured into that budget.
Awesome. Thanks, folks. Before we wrap up, Maddie, did you want to, I believe you had an offer for the audience. I don't know if you wanted to cover that really quick.
I do have an offer. Yes.
We still have people on, so.
I just put in the chat, and thanks so much for staying around for an extra few minutes, everyone. I just put in the chat our calendar link. You can also go to our website and book an appointment there for a free consultation. You will get $100 off with code CallRail, and there's a 14-day money back guarantee. So if you're unhappy for any reason, you want to change from outreach services to more virtual receptionist to chat, all of the above, very flexible month-to-month plans. And we have a few deals also going on right now this month that even exceed that offer. So be sure to mention CallRail so we can thank them for the referral from this program. But you'll get, as of today, a special offer if you visit our website. So I don't want to say what it is because I want to watch this a year from now, but check it out and we can help you take advantage of that.
Awesome. Definitely make sure you check that out. And if you want to try CallRail, we have free 14-day trials. It literally takes 5 to 10 minutes to get set up and start tracking where your leads are coming from. If you go to callrail.com/call tracking, takes just a couple minutes to sign up and you'll be up and running before the end of the afternoon. As always, thanks for joining. Super excited to have these awesome guests. Oh, sorry, Timothy. We will definitely be sharing out the recording. Timothy thought the webinar started at 2, but we'll share the recording. If anyone has any questions, reach out to myself, Chris, Maddie, or Nalini, and we look forward to seeing you next time.